News coming up in just a sec.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, December 7th. Your reader for this hour is Edwin J. Vieira, and for the next hour, your reader will be Ron Bickelman. First, let's take a look at the weather. For today, we'll see intermittent snow and flurries accumulating 1 to 2 inches with a high of 31. More snow and flurries with little or no accumulation tonight, and the storm total snowfall will be an inch or two with a low of 13. Clouds and sun breaking through tomorrow with a high of 22 and a low of 10 to start the work week. It'll be a bit colder on Tuesday with a bit of snow with a low 32 but a high of 35. Snowy and breezy in the morning for Wednesday with a high 36 and a low 26. Thursday to be mostly cloudy and cold with a high 28, low 21. Mostly cloudy and cold to start the coming weekend, but mostly cloudy and cold again on Friday with a high of 26 and a low of 17. And through the weekend, it'll be cold with a bit of morning snow with a high of 24 and a low of 19. And now here's our first story. Despite many fiscal woes, Ryan remains optimistic for term. Incoming mayor has novel slate of ideas to bring city back into solvency. When Sean Ryan steps into the mayor's office next year, he will inherit a cratered budget, crumbling infrastructure, and a city full of people looking for answers as poverty rates remain high and many big problems need solving. Ryan, the 14-year veteran of the state legislature who won the Democratic primary handedly and trounced his opponents in the general election, now has to assume the position of an executive looking to fix years of mismanagement, while also making up for years of disinvestment, he said, while operating from a weak financial position. City reserves are non-existent, and emergency reserves were recently raided to close out last year's budget. The city's capital needs remain an endless well of potential investment for a government with no money. City residents are already wary of more significant tax increases on the heels of 2 steep bumps, a trend that's likely to continue even as they enjoyed stagnant taxes for years under the previous mayor, Byron Brown. Still, Ryan projects optimism as he steps into an arena of dysfunction, claiming confidence in his ability to right the ship. This week, he announced a major change in the structure of city governance, introducing 4 deputy mayors he says will ultimately save money and get city government working more efficiently. He's in the process of setting up a fund to help the city modernize and professionalize with donations instead of taxpayer money, and he has pledged to make transparency and the sharing of city information a hallmark of his administration. The weight of all those promises now rests squarely on his shoulders. In a recent interview he did with the Buffalo News, Ryan explained how he plans to accomplish these while pulling the city back into fiscal solvency. We're going to endeavor to do smart public policy to serve the citizens of the city of Buffalo in the best, most efficient ways, Ryan said. But we will stumble. We're human and we make mistakes. We'll say we made a mistake instead of run from it, and we'll move on. So that's the new era of what we will bring in. He has repeatedly said everything's on the table in terms of addressing the city's financial woes. Significant tax increases are all but inevitable, likely for several years. But Ryan has already approached his colleagues in state government about funding increases and has other ideas to help stem the tide as he attempts to bring the books into balance. And he's looking to use the city's considerable debt availability. Under the state-imposed limit, the city could borrow well over $1 billion for significant infrastructure investments in city-owned property, something that's gone by the wayside during Brown's tenure, even when interest rates were relatively low. You see it now by going to our community centers, looking at our streets, looking at the quality of our city buildings, Ryan said. Deferring capital doesn't stop the need for the capital. You still have to do it sooner or later. Further delaying needed repairs will only add to labor and material costs while increasing the scope of repairs, Ryan added. There's no good reason to apply arbitrary indebted limits, he said. And he said the city may need to borrow for operational costs in the short term. The administration of Mayor Christopher Scanlon, who became acting mayor when Brown resigned in October of 2024, is projecting a budget shortfall in the current fiscal year. We're not going to be able to finish this year out without probably doing a deficit note, because there's no money to finish the year out and there's no fund to take it from. But looking to another Great Lakes city, Ryan's team has also been in talks with people in Detroit city leadership about a fund used to help that city with strategic neighborhood goals. The fund, called the Strategic Neighborhood Fund and run by the not-for-profit Invest Detroit, has raised more than $75 million to be used to help the city with planning efforts meant to create substantial change in specific neighborhoods. Ryan said that he is in talks with not-for-profits here to set up a similar fund and has pledges of more than $1 million so far. Many of the details are still being worked out, but he said early ideas for the funding includes paying for salary increases for key positions to attract outside talent, funding best practices expeditions to other cities for City Hall leadership, paying for studies and funding national talent searches. It will pay for things the city needs to modernize, but cannot currently afford under its fiscal constraints. The pool of money is going to be used for available hires, searching for firms to do consulting work with, but also to pay differentials to be able to get the salary up without having to put that on the taxpayer, he said. The first major project he hopes the fund can be used for is the search to set a new police commissioner and supplementing the commissioner's salary to attract outside candidates. He also plans to ask the business community for assistance with expertise, lending help in planning and reshaping city systems to make them work better. So far, there's been a very positive response, Ryan said. It's that people feel this was like a big repressed demand to modernize Buffalo, and they're looking to help as much as they can. Sharing more public information. Ryan also plans to open up City Hall, sharing information freely from every department, putting documents and reports on the city websites for everyone to see. I want my public information officer to be able to say this information is available on the website in this section, and there it is when public information requests are filed, he said. The hope is that it will go a long way towards restoring public trust, especially as the city continues to deal with the fallout from Erie County Narcotics Detective Daniel D.J. Granville's late-night car crash where he hit 7 parked cars with his county-owned truck. His sister, Buffalo Police Lieutenant Lucia Escalin, responded to the scene where Granville was not subjected to sobriety tests. Ryan said that level of transparency will be extended to the police and fire departments. Accountability. It's been a key part of my public safety platform, Ryan said. Nobody's going to call the police if they think the police will not be accountable to them. So that's why we're looking for a candidate for commissioner with experience reforming departments. Ryan will be inaugurated at Kleinhand's Music Hall on New Year's Day, an event that's open to the public for those who request tickets. We want to send the message that we're going to do things differently as the city government, Ryan said. The public is going to be included in the decisions being made in City Hall. GOP has no plan and running out of time on health care. From Washington. Senator Tim Scott, Republican of South Carolina, was on the way to a health committee hearing this week when he was asked what his party was going to do about insurance subsidies that are set to expire, driving up the cost of care for millions of Americans and leaving millions of others uninsured. He laughed and said, "Sounds like a question." His press secretary offered a reporter her card. Then Scott pulled a common Capitol Hill avoidance tactic. He ducked into the men's room. The senator, who subsequently declined an interview request, could be forgiven for not having an answer. Roughly 3 weeks before a set of enhanced subsidies under the Affordable Care Act expire, Republicans are scrambling to come up with a stopgap measure that would help Americans keep their coverage and possibly prevent their party from getting clobbered in next year's midterm elections. President Trump, who'd hinted that he may lay out a plan, has remained mum, while top Republicans in Congress are staring down the deadline with little to show for their efforts to coalesce around a proposal. The American people are looking to us to find a solution, Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, the chair of the health panel, declared at a hearing on Wednesday. Now we can push for big ideas, grandiose ideas on the right or the left, but we've got to have a solution for 3 weeks from now. Republicans have struggled for years to come up with a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act, which President Barack Obama signed into law in 2010. Cassidy is, for the moment, setting his sights lower. By discouraging grandiose ideas, he was telling his colleagues to think narrowly and move fast. But even that will be difficult. Cassidy has proposed a plan involving health savings accounts that health economists say will do little to help people maintain their coverage. In the House, Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, told Politico that he and his fellow Republican leaders plan to circulate a framework for a plan early next week. But nobody seems to know what that might be. Joel White, a health policy analyst who advises Republicans, said that any plan that could garner 60 votes in the Senate would be unlikely to pass in the House. The most important feature of any proposal, he said, was whether it had the support of President Trump. "I don't know if it's possible to do something in 3 weeks," said White, who testified before Cassidy's committee this week. The key driver for most policy actions in this Congress has been Donald Trump. What has Trump said? He has said, give the money to the consumers, not the insurance companies. Trump said the following in a social media post last month. I am recommending to Senate Republicans that hundreds of billions of dollars currently being sent to money-sucking insurance companies in order to save the bad health care provided by Obamacare be sent directly to the people so that they can purchase their own much better health care and have money left over. That's what Cassidy says he wants to do. His solution is for the government to take the money it spends on subsidies and give it directly to consumers, who could deposit it into a tax-exempt health savings account and use it to offset their health costs. I absolutely agree with President Trump that we need to redirect the subsidies from insurance companies and give patients the power, Cassidy said last month on the Senate floor. But under federal law, health savings accounts can't be used to pay for insurance premiums. White said the payments Cassidy proposed would benefit consumers who purchase, quote, catastrophic plans, which have high deductibles and low monthly premiums and are meant to help people with expensive medical emergencies, not with day-to-day medical costs. But once the subsidies expire, most people will not be able to afford health insurance, said Dr. Benjamin D. Summers, a physician and health economist at Harvard University, who also served in the Biden administration. He said Republicans were twisting themselves into pretzels trying to solve a political problem instead of developing a policy solution. The most honest thing to say, intellectually, would be, we just don't think the government should spend this money to help people get health insurance. Some people are uninsured because of that. That's okay with us, Summers said. Instead, he added, they are scrambling to find some sort of policy proposal that makes it sound like they're doing something. The expiring subsidies are tax credits that were first enacted in 2021 as part of a pandemic relief plan. Since their introduction, the number of people insured through the program known as Obamacare has been more than doubled from about 11 million to 24 million, according to KFF, formerly known as the Kaiser Family Foundation, a nonpartisan health policy research group. The subsidies are broadly popular with consumers. A poll released Thursday by KFF found that 84% of Obamacare enrollees, including nearly all Democrats and about 7 in 10 Republicans, say Congress should extend the tax credits. KFF estimates that if the subsidies expire, premiums will rise by 114%. The subsidies were the central issue during the recent government shutdown. Republicans refused to extend them, and Democrats in turn refused to fund the government without them. Federal agencies were shuttered for 43 days until some Democrats broke with their party to allow the government to reopen, based in part on a promise from Republicans that they would get a Senate vote on extending the subsidies. Democrats and supporters of the Affordable Care Act say there is an easy solution to helping people keep their coverage. Republicans can vote with them to extend the tax credits. Some GOP lawmakers, particularly moderates and those facing toughest re-election races, have been negotiating with Democrats on a compromise plan to do so. But so far, the proposals don't appear to have enough support. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, the ranking member of the Health Committee, noted at this past week's hearing that the situation had left Republicans in a bind with no time to spare. Sanders has long championed a single-payer government-run health plan, Medicare for All, that is an anathema to Republicans. The reason for this hearing, to be frank, is my Republican friends understand they've got a political problem, he said, adding, yes, our current system is broken. Yes, we need to create a new system, but unfortunately, we aren't going to do it in 2 weeks. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:13 a.m. and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:13 p.m. And now on to a front page feature. Detection treatment makes a dent in lung cancer rates. On a Friday in October, Pam Korn welcomed the distraction of moving into her new house in Amherst. Before long, she knew she would start to feel the reality that in only a few days, she would be undergoing lung cancer surgery at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. As the surgery approached, she, of course, was scared and nervous, but mostly she just felt grateful. Grateful that her eldest daughter, a cancer scientist, Rachel, years earlier, had pushed her, as a former smoker, to sign up for Roswell Park's lung cancer screening program. Grateful that she'd been screened every year since 2019, and grateful the scans caught a small nodule early, was carefully monitored annually until it grew to a size that necessitated removal. I'm so grateful to my daughter, said Corn, a 60-year-old real estate agent who smoked from the time she was 14 years old until she quit at 36. I mean, she saved my life. Getting me into that program saved my life. Stories like Corn's are becoming more common in Western New York, where fewer people are dying of lung cancer because fewer people are smoking. More people are getting screened, and treatments are improving. The latest data released by Roswell Park this year show a nearly 28% decline in the lung cancer death rate in the 8 counties of Western New York over a 7-year period. For the period of 2011 to 2015, there were 1,045 average annual lung cancer deaths in Western New York. For the latest period available, of 2018 to 2022, there were 837 annual lung cancer death rates. That means on average, 208 fewer Western New Yorkers are dying each year from lung cancer. Lung cancer remains the leading cancer killer in Western New York, but cancer researchers see an opportunity to decrease deaths even more. That's because lung cancer screening rates remain very low, with less than 20% of eligible New York State residents actually getting screened. Screening is the most effective way to detect cancer at its earliest and most treatable stage. Increasing those rates has been a priority for state legislators and Roswell Park. On Thursday, Governor Kathy Hochul signed a bill into law to require health insurers to cover the cost of follow-up screenings or diagnostic services for lung cancer. And Roswell Park in late 2022 rolled out a mobile lung cancer screening unit with a CT scanner on board that's geared toward bringing lung cancer screening directly to underserved and high-risk communities. That mobile unit has visited 52 locations in Western New York and screened nearly 2,000 people. If I was not in this program, I would not have known I have lung cancer, Corn said. So I would just encourage everybody who qualifies to get in there, get screened, and get just one CT scan a year. But there's more progress needed on screening. Just at Roswell Park, about 25,000 people have died from lung cancer since 1964, the year the U.S. Surgeon General declared smoking a cause of lung cancer. Corn's mother is among those who died. Corn said her mother, a smoker, was diagnosed with aggressive, fast-growing small cell lung cancer and given just 2 weeks to live. Her mother ended up participating in a clinical trial that let her live for 28 more months before she died in 2013 at 68 years old. This is the kind of cancer that, once you have it, it's too late because it's silent, Corn said. Mary Reed has been working on lung cancer initiatives since 1990, and for about 20 years, the 5-year survival for lung cancer did not improve. Now we're starting to see people surviving, and that consequently affects the mortality rate, said Reed, Chief of Cancer Screening, Survivorship, and Mentorship at Roswell Park. So this is really good news for us. Fewer people smoking helps, since smoking is responsible for about 75% of lung cancers, Reed said. And while lung cancer screening is picking up, it's still not popular, and more work is needed on outreach and education. If every eligible individual in the United States was screened for lung cancer, more than 62,000 lives could be saved over 5 years, according to a study released last month. As for those who should be screened and is eligible for lung cancer screening, patients who have a history of cancer of the lung, esophagus, head, or neck, or they must meet 3 criteria, be at least 50 years old, have a 20-pack years of smoking history, number of packs smoked per day multiplied by number of years smoked, and must have smoked within the last 15 years. Moving forward, Reed said, screening progress is needed in the counties surrounding Erie County. These counties are often underserved, isolated, and the smoking rates are relatively high. Orleans County, Reed said, has the highest rates of lung cancer and lung cancer mortality in the state. She believes at least part of the problem in rural communities is a shortage of primary care doctors, which means not enough low-dose CT scans are being ordered. Moving forward, Reed says, Roswell Park's mobile lung cancer screening unit will be spending more time in Orleans County. But therapies are advancing. When Dr. Sei Yendamori joined Roswell Park in 2007 as a surgeon and scientist, it was rare for doctors to see a tumor smaller than 2 centimeters. That meant the default operation was usually a lobectomy, which involves surgically removing a lobe of the lung. That created difficult situations, especially for patients who had compromised lung function from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or emphysema. Treatment today is much different. More screening means nodules are being caught early and carefully monitored, and Yendamori said a new set of therapies has arrived that didn't exist 5 years ago. For example, immunotherapy, using the body's immune system to fight cancer, has dramatically changed how we treat lung cancer, said Yendamori, Chief Strategy Officer and Chief of Thoracic Surgery at Roswell Park. Even patients with stage 4 disease, he said, can live many years when they respond well to the new treatments out there. At this point in 2025, going into 2026, as a physician for lung cancer, this is one of the most exciting times we've ever had because we can do so much more for patients now than we were able to do before, said Yendamuri, who performed Corin's surgery. Yendamuri hopes the momentum will only build and new therapies will continue arriving. Lung cancer surgery has changed, he said, and is now minimally invasive with quicker recoveries. For her surgery, Corin said she only had 3 incisions, which didn't even need external stitches to heal. The oldest patient I've done this on was 90 years old, Yendamuri said. 25 years back, nobody would consider doing lung cancer surgery on a 90-year-old. But with the techniques we have now, it makes it possible. Because they caught it early. Corin's surgery was successfully completed on October 30th, and she was discharged from the hospital 2 days later to recover at home. Nearly 3 weeks from the surgery, roughly halfway into a 6 to 8 week recovery, Corin said she was feeling good, but tired. She had just had her follow-up appointment with Yendamuri, who told Corin the surgery was successful and the tumor was removed. Corin said her cancer was stage 1 coli adenoid carcinoma, a rare invasive lung cancer that luckily was caught early. Corin said her margins were clear, the lymph nodes were negative, and she doesn't need chemotherapy or radiation. Because they caught it early, my survival rate looks very, very good, she said. With her good prognosis, she will have low-dose CT scans every 6 months for the next 2 years. I hope I'm done with cancer, said Corin, who is also a breast cancer survivor. I just want to be healthy and enjoy my family and be able to do what I love to do in my career and just appreciate being healthy. If you don't have your health, it doesn't matter what else is there for you in your life. Most of all, she hopes her story will inspire others at risk for lung cancer to get screened. You can fix what you don't know about, so screening gives you that chance, she said, and I want everyone to be able to be around as long as they can. And now on to world news. U.S. fentanyl focus left Latin America awash in cocaine. Fighting an international alliance of gangs, guerrilla groups, drug cartels, and mafias, the Ecuadorian military found itself alone. By 2022, the government had lost control of major prisons, with gangs running them as recruitment centers. Killings were rising fast, and it was clear that far more cocaine was moving through the country than the authorities could ever hope to seize. But when the U.S. ambassador at the time, Mike Fitzpatrick, phoned Washington to convey Ecuador's plea for help, his calls fell on deaf ears, he said. Where's the fentanyl? That's our focus right now, he recalled being told by senior State Department officials. Since President Trump first took office in 2017 and continuing through President Joe Biden's term, the U.S. largely shifted its focus to combating fentanyl, the drug driving a national overdose crisis. Given the soaring fentanyl deaths in the U.S., making it a priority made sense, officials say. But the severity of the switch gave room for cocaine traffickers, once a prime target of U.S. law enforcement, to thrive, so much that Ecuador nearly collapsed in the grip of criminal groups, according to 5 current and former U.S. and Ecuadorian officials. In the decades-long war against drugs, cocaine, it seemed, was no longer a priority. Even now, after the United States eventually mustered a response and increased financial aid to help Ecuador's military fight drug groups, its government is struggling to keep control. Officials describe a criminal culture so powerful that school children aspire to join gangs. This is an existential war, said Giovanni Davoli, the Italian ambassador to Ecuador, who compared the fight to Italy's struggle against mafias. Ecuador is not a narco state, but it needs help. The Trump administration has launched an aggressive military campaign in the region, attacking boats it says are smuggling drugs, but it's unclear whether those strikes will make a dent in the recent resurgent cocaine trade, nor is it clear whether it is the ultimate goal. While U.S. officials have called the campaign a counter-drug operation, they've offered little evidence that the boats were actually carrying drugs. The operation has also focused more on Venezuela, whose role in the drug trade is fairly limited. Privately, U.S. officials have made clear that the Trump administration aims to drive Venezuelan authorities from power. Venezuela's authoritarian leader from power. The White House did not respond to a request for comment. Cocaine superhighway. For decades, Ecuador was a pillar of stability next to neighbors such as Colombia and Peru, which were racked with drug violence and political disarray. From that place of relative security, Ecuador pushed the United States away, closing a U.S. military base in 2009. In response, the U.S. Embassy shut down its military office and main State Department drug fighting program in Ecuador. By the time Trump became president, Mexican cartels lying low in Ecuador were consolidating their power. The cartels worked with Colombian groups to push cocaine into Ecuador, where gangs then exported the drugs using speedboats, submarines, and hijacked cargo containers bound for Europe and the United States. As the trade grew, those partnerships expanded to include European mafias, officials say. The alliances transformed Ecuador into what U.S. officials called a cocaine superhighway. Ecuador's president has estimated that as much as 70% of the world's supply flows through his nation. That change took place as fentanyl became a leading cause of death in the United States, fueling an overdose crisis that Trump and Biden both made a priority. In 2023, nearly 73,000 overdoses were linked to fentanyl, compared with 6,000 deaths tied to cocaine, unlaced with other drugs, according to U.S. government statistics. Cocaine came to be seen by many as bad, but not going to kill you bad, said Fitzpatrick, the ambassador to Ecuador from 2019 to 2024. In Latin America, the drug was the main driver of terror and violence, killing and maiming civilians as it made its way to buyers mostly in the United States and Europe. And cocaine use has been surging, health authorities say. Some 25 million people across the world used the drug in 2023, up from 17 million a decade earlier, according to UN figures. Consumption has increased 154% in the Western United States, and on the East Coast since 2019, only 20%, according to drug testing company Millennium Health. Pistorius' goal? Reviving a constrained German army. Ever since Germany reformed its military after World War II, the primary role of the German defense minister has been to maintain an army large enough to protect the country, but constrained enough to prevent a return to German militarism. The role of the incumbent Boris Pistorius is different. As Russia warns it's ready for war with Europe, Pistorius' goal is to make Germany's military capable of leading the continent's defense in a major land conflict, and to prepare the country's pacifist population for this new posture. On Friday, German lawmakers approved the latest part of Pistorius' plan, a law that aims to increase the number of German soldiers to 260,000 by 2035, a nearly 50% boost. To incentivize recruitment, soldiers will be paid more and receive more training that is useful for civilian careers. All 18-year-old men will be sent a questionnaire requiring them to provide information about their health and fitness, making it easier to identify potential recruits. Women will be able to fill out the form voluntarily. The law, which has set off one of the most turbulent national debates in recent memory, stops short of actually drafting soldiers. That's a mistake, according to some experts, who fear Germany won't be ready for a Russian attack on NATO territory, even if the law requires Parliament to discuss reintroducing conscription if too few people volunteer for duty. Pistorius' supporters said it was the best he could do, given a deep-seated unease about rearming the country that started World War II. That's one of the biggest official changes we've seen in many years in the areas of security and defense, said the 65-year-old Pistorius. It affects a generation and future generations who had never had to deal with these issues because that threat didn't exist, he added. The law is the latest in a sequence of moves that were unthinkable less than a decade ago, but that Pistorius has promoted in order to bolster German defense. In March, he helped lead a successful effort to remove limits on military spending from Germany's constitution that was a major shift for a debt-shy country, and it enabled Pistorius to spend millions more on arms. Tanks, ships, and aircraft that the country previously couldn't buy. Pistorius has also championed a stuttering effort to integrate Europe's militaries. He was a guiding force behind the recent formation of the Group of Five, a bloc of defense ministers from major European countries who seek tighter security coordination. For some, such moves provoke unease, summoning memories of the German expansionism during the two world wars. In our interview, Pistorius acknowledged the weight of German history, but said it had given him and others a sense of responsibility, namely that we must do our part to ensure we continue to live in peace in Europe, he said, adding that the expanded German military will still be much smaller than it was during the Cold War. Back then, Germany had as many as 500,000 soldiers, but limited to military ambitions, and it never sought to lead Europe's defense in the way it now seeks. Pistorius' effort comes as other European countries also try to rapidly increase their standing armies to counter an expansionist Russia, and as the U.S. scales back its support for the continent. The task of rebuilding Germany's army is even more fraught because of the long shadow cast by the militarism in the Nazi era. Opinion polls in Germany show a pervasive fear of sending another generation into war. Domestic politics play a role too, with parties on the far right and left that are partial to Russia and that favor a dialogue with it. Despite pushing for contentious measures, Pistorius has remained Germany's most popular politician for most of the past 3 years, according to monthly opinion polls. He speaks with the rasp of a drill sergeant who has been yelling all day. His speech is unadorned to the point and sometimes self-deprecating, and at one point in our interview, he compared his work to that of a soccer coach. Pistorius' popularity has allowed him to survive the electoral fall of the center-left Social Democratic Party, which led the previous governing coalition until it collapsed last year. Reappointed as part of a new coalition after the center-right won in the last election, Pistorius is Germany's first defense minister since World War II to serve chancellors from 2 different parties. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:30 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:30 p.m. And now, national news. Halligan continues as U.S. Attorney despite judge's ruling. The legal decision that ended the criminal cases against FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James has left the leadership of a key U.S. Attorney's office in Virginia in limbo, leading to frustration among judges in the state. A federal judge ruled last week that the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsay Halligan, a Trump loyalist, had been unlawfully appointed by the Trump administration, and as a result, the judge ordered the dismissal of the high-profile indictments against Comey and James. But while that decision by James Cameron McGowan Curry, who was brought in from a district in South Carolina to handle the question, found Halligan's appointment invalid, it did not expressly order her to be removed from the office. The DOJ has seized on the lack of explicit instructions to keep Halligan in place for now, eliciting the judge's irritation. On Thursday, one judge removed Halligan's name from a court filing and questioned the administration's argument she could still hold the job. Days earlier, a magistrate judge, hearing a different case, had raised similar concerns, according to people familiar with the exchange. It's the latest clash between the Trump administration and the federal judiciary over the proper way to appoint U.S. attorneys. The Justice Department has used unusual maneuvers to keep its preferred U.S. attorneys in place in districts all across the country, including in New Jersey, Nevada, and California, over the objections of federal judges there and without the Senate approval typically required of such positions. At a hearing in Alexandria, Virginia on Thursday before Judge Michael S. Nachmanoff, involving an immigrant accused of illegally re-entering the country, prosecutors struggled to explain why Halligan remained listed on the U.S. Attorney on court filings. The defense lawyer at the hearing asked that Halligan's name be removed, and Nachmanoff, who oversaw the case against Comey before its dismissal, agreed that there appeared to be a problem. Nachmanoff told prosecutors he found it, quote, difficult to reconcile the fact that Halligan continued to oversee cases in the district with Curry's ruling, which clearly found Ms. Halligan is disqualified as serving as the interim U.S. Attorney or the U.S. Attorney at all. Throughout the administration, though the administration has vowed to appeal the Curry decision, it has yet to do so or even seek to pause it while pursuing an appeal. Nachmanoff pointed to that in asserting that decision is binding on the court. He added that the terms of Curry's assignment were to rule on the issue, quote, for all matters in the Eastern District of Virginia. For that reason, he disagreed Halligan's disqualification only applied to the cases of James and Comey. When pressed to explain the Justice Department's rationale, Nicholas Patterson, the senior prosecutor in court, said that his office had been instructed to continue using Halligan's signature in court filings as a U.S. and special attorney. Nachmanoff decided to delete the U.S. Attorney title next to Halligan's name in the court filing in the Thursday case. Frankly, it's unsatisfying to hear that something that appears to be in direct contravention of Judge Curry's order is on this pleading, the judge said. Inside the Justice Department, officials have consulted with the Office of Legal Counsel, which conducts legal analysis for the administration, according to people familiar with the matter, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe internal deliberations. The office has told the department officials that because Curry's order did not require a specific measure to be taken, like removing Halligan, she could stay, even though the judge declared her appointment invalid, the people said. In other words, the administration's position was that, since the court order didn't explicitly remove Halligan from the job, she could keep it. A spokesperson for the Eastern District of Virginia declined to comment. Maha activists call for EPA Zeldins to be fired. Several prominent activists in the Make America Healthy Again movement are urging President Trump to fire Lee Zeldin, the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, over his decisions to loosen restrictions on harmful chemicals. In a petition circulated on social media, the activist wrote that the former congressman from New York, quote, has prioritized the interests of chemical corporations over the well-being of American families and children. The petition was a remarkable rebuke of the EPA chief from allies of another cabinet member, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the health secretary and chief architect of the MAHA movement. It underscored growing tensions within Trump's political base over the chemicals in the nation's air, water, and food supply. As of Saturday morning, nearly 4,800 people had signed the petition. The organizers, including Vani Hari, a MAHA influencer who's known as the food babe to her 2.3 million Instagram followers, and Alex Clark, the host of a health and wellness podcast popular among conservatives. When asked about the petition, EPA spokesperson Mike Bistache said in an email, quote, Administrator Zeldin has been working closely with President Trump and Secretary Kennedy to implement policies to make America healthy again. In an emailed statement, Kennedy said to Zeldin, he's, quote, proven himself to be a steadfast partner in our mission to make America healthy again. Together we're driving the MAHA strategy forward with force, advancing major initiatives on PFAS, microplastics, and water quality to protect the health and future of every American. Stephanie Speer, Kennedy's principal deputy chief of staff, praised Zeldin's announcement in April that the EPA would re-examine research on the potential health risks of fluoride in water. Kennedy had been a vocal critic of pesticides and other chemicals, saying they're poisoning Americans and contributing to a rise in chronic diseases. Zeldin has taken a different approach at the EPA, which Trump has stocked with officials who previously served as lawyers and lobbyists for the chemical industry. Last month, the EPA approved the use of two pesticides that meet the internationally recognized definition for, quote, forever chemicals, also known as PFAS, and are linked to serious health risks. Bistache said that his agency has not classified the two chemicals as PFAS or polyfluoroalkyl substances under both the Biden and Trump administrations. He said the pesticides did not pose any health risk when used as intended. The Trump EPA is 100% committed to combating per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, contamination, Bistache said, adding Zeldin was, quote, a staunch advocate for protecting Americans from contaminated drinking water. In July, the EPA proposal allowing the use of the contentious herbicide dicamba on some cotton and soybean crops, and in May, the agency said it would delay deadlines for water utilities to limit two types of PFAS present in the tap water of millions of Americans. If our enemies were to write a plan on how to poison Americans and prevent us from growing our own food, this would be it, said Zen Honeycutt, the founder and executive director of Moms Across America, a group closely linked to the MAHA movement. Trump made a promise to the American people to address pesticides and reduce childhood chronic illnesses, Honeycutt added. Lee Zeldin's making a liar out of him. Known as forever chemicals because they're virtually indestructible, PFAS are a class of thousands of chemicals used in everyday products such as nonstick cookware, waterproof clothing, and stain-resistant carpets. Exposure to PFAS has been linked to decreased fertility in women, developmental delays in children, and increased risk of some cancers, according to the EPA. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:38 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:38 p.m. And now to business news. DePaul housing plan okay, despite Pitt's opposition. James W. Pitts wielded tremendous power in Buffalo during his quarter century on the Common Council. But the former politician didn't have the clout to force changes to a housing development in his Central Park neighborhood. Pitts on Monday lost his hard-fought effort before the Buffalo Planning Board to force Rochester nonprofit DePaul Development to downsize and redesign its proposed rebuild of the outdated McKinley Square transitional housing facility on Main Street. Despite intense lobbying by Pitts in recent weeks, the Social Services Agency won approval to demolish the existing 3-story residential care facility at 2700 Main and replace it with a 4-story building that would still have the same number of units at 80, but larger in size for each. The $19.4 million project by DePaul would replace a building constructed in 1950 that agency's CEO Mark Fuller previously said does not meet codes. Pitt's president of the Central Park Homeowners Association complained that DePaul didn't consult neighbors on the project and ignored community concerns it's too big and too dense for the 1.2-acre site, even though it has the same number of units. He says the design doesn't fit the community and would harm the neighborhood's historic character. And he reiterated those objections Monday while criticizing DePaul and calling for a drop in size. This is not collaboration. This is an effort to try to get a decision right away instead of working with the community and sitting down and talking about the real issues. Pitt said, "We will continue to press forward to try to get DePaul to reduce the density of this particular project." But DePaul said those changes aren't an option because the $22 million state grant that is funding the project is contingent on maintaining the number of units. We were very candid in the meeting that the density is something we cannot change, noting that, said project attorney Peter Sorge, noting the State Office of Mental Health has already reviewed the project. The board previously had requested DePaul and the Homeowners Association hold a community meeting, which about 25 people attended. Pitts described it as a last minute and the first time many people could learn about the project and get questions answered. There were a few people there who expressed very vigorously their support for this project, but there were also a number of other people who had the concerns that had been presented, Pitts said. But DePaul Vice President Christopher Syracuse said that once questions were answered, only Pitts were still in opposition. It was not a few people that expressed support, but the majority, he said, adding that some neighbors even questioned why Pitts was speaking for them. There were genuine and sincere questions about the operation of the facility, but as soon as they were described, there were no concerns. Officials expect to finish design work, permitting, and bidding over the next 4 to 6 months, with remediation, demolition, and construction starting in late spring and completion after 18 months. Monroe developers look across the street. Fresh off the redevelopment of the former Record Theater complex into the Monroe Building Group, a group of 5 preservationist developers are ready to start work on their next project to renovate 3 historic buildings at 1762 through 1766 Main Street after closing on a $3.17 million construction loan from the Community Preservation Corps and New York State Homes and Community Renewal. The developers, Richard Rogers, Travis Gordon, Urban Vantage, Jason Yachts of Common Bond Real Estate, and Derek King and Michael Puma of Preservation Studios, plan to spend $4.6 million to transform the properties into a mixed-use project. It will feature first-floor commercial space and 8 affordable apartments priced for households earning up to 100% of the area median income or $101,000 for a family of 4. The rehabilitation project across Lafayette Street from Monroe is intended to meet the growing demand for housing and retail services for the Midtown area of Buffalo. The work by BRD Construction will maintain the historic character of the buildings while introducing modern amenities and sustainable design. This project proves yet again that historic preservation is a powerful economic development tool for Rust Belt cities, Yachts said. CPC is providing $1.97 million in construction financing and $970,000 in permanent financing, while HCR adds $1.2 million in construction and permanent financing through its Small Building Participation Loan Program. Erie County is also providing $500,000 in American Rescue Plan funds, while National Grid contributed $62,598 for energy efficiency. The developers are also getting $949,795 in equity from historic tax credits. Pennsylvania is a dividing line on natural gas policy. As New York State backs off from its all-out push to electrify and phase out the use of fossil fuels such as natural gas, Michael Colpoys sees a contrast with what's happening just over the state border in Pennsylvania. Colpoys, age 61, recently moved back to Western New York after he was named president of National Fuel Gas Company's utility subsidiary. The Buffalo native has been based in Erie, Pennsylvania, where the energy company's Pennsylvania utility business is based. Last summer, Pittsburgh hosted the Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit. Companies announced more than $90 billion in new energy and AI investments in the state, including a $50 million pipeline project by a national fuel subsidiary that will support a data center. In September, Governor Kathy Hochul hosted a Future Energy Economy Summit in Syracuse that focused on clean energy technologies and the potential for additional nuclear capacity. Colpoys said that while he's been working in Pennsylvania, he's seen natural gas embraced as a fuel to promote growth. They're acting now based on what's available to be able to generate economic development, he said. Kolpoy said New York State's policy stance toward natural gas is, quote, adversarial and actually sometimes hostile, and it's mainly driven by downstate interests. Environmental groups say that response is warranted. They are pushing the state to phase out use of fossil fuels, such as natural gas, in favor of electricity, arguing it's essential to safeguarding residents' health and combating climate change. Kolpoy has moved into his new role at National Fuel at a time when energy is a prominent topic. The state, amid a court challenge, has delayed implementation of the All-Electric Buildings Act. The law would prevent newly built homes and newly constructed buildings of 7 stories or less from having natural gas hookups. Meanwhile, the state's energy plan, essentially a blueprint for the next 15 years, now being finalized, would keep natural gas in the energy picture. We feel the pendulum is swinging back a little bit more in the direction of having natural gas be part of the mixed solution, which to me is common sense, Kolpoy said. But he said he feels it's not a big enough step. They really don't identify hybrid heating as a potential solution, Kolpoy said, referring to a system incorporating both natural gas and electricity. He said the draft energy plan also still calls for rapid electrification amid debate over cost of ramping up reliance on electricity and the grid investment that would be required. National Fuel has made a lot of news of itself lately. Under a plan approved by the State Public Service Commission, the energy company has raised its rates twice this year, and National Fuel announced a $2.6 billion deal to acquire CenterPoint Energy Resources Corp's Ohio operations. When completed next year, the deal will increase National Fuel's regulated utility customer base by 50%. The acquisition, the largest in National Fuel's history, extends the energy company's presence into a new state. It's going to be a huge undertaking, Kolpoy said. I'm sure we have a great team that's going to be able to pull it off, but we're going to learn a lot in the process. Kolpoy said he expects to spend a significant amount of time in Dayton, Ohio, supporting the transition. National Fuel will add 335,000 new residential and commercials and industrial customers, while adding about 5,900 miles of transmission pipes to its distribution network. The deal will also increase the size of National Fuel's utility operations to more than 50% of the company's overall business, creating more of a balance with its drilling operations. As a president of National Fuel's utility business, Kolpoy said he is emphasizing choosing the right people for leadership roles, improving customer service, and attention to safety. It's always been the message that safety is the most important thing, but what I've asked our teams to do is to look for ways to continually evaluate how we can reduce risk, because it's just a super important thing for our customers and for our company, he said. Nuclear energy deadline nears. Back in October, the New York Power Authority issued 2 separate solicitations related to Hochul's plan to add nuclear power capacity in upstate New York. The solicitations, known as requests for intent, were directed to developers interested in building the power plant and communities interested in hosting it. Submissions for both categories are due December 11th. In a recent webinar, Power Authority officials said access to water, ample land, and evidence of community support would be important factors in choosing a host community. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. Again, that number is 716-821-5555. Paulette Adams, Edith E. Bartlett, Diane J. Birut, Norbert Binkowski, M.D., Pablo Branford, Joseph Britting, Robert P. Broadfuhrer, Joan E. Buchanan Motzi, Kathleen Mary Kathy Burke Nee Lynch, Anthony J. Cassetta Jr., Jerome T. Jakowski, Jack W. DiCarlo, Harry Robert D., Donna L. Fankhauser, Scott Allen Fraser, John D. Grandoni, Gary Bruce Hanks, Diana B. Havens, nee Bobinko, Marlene C. Himmons, nee Jackson, Georgette Georgie L. Higgins, Paul Hinsherrick, Jackie Scott Jones, Thomas J. Klubeck, Arno Constable, John J. Kazuda, Irene L. Kumuzerski, Joellen Ann Kuzina, Francis L. Lawrence Nee Sibowitz, Mark James Leitner, Marie L. Martin. William E. Matthias II. Marianne L. McCarthy. Patricia F. Michelinsky ni Stefaniak. James E. Nowak. Senior Edmundette Pazinski, FSSJ. Cheryl A. Painter. Ardith A. Palmer ni Luther. Elaine T. Piazza ni Pabis. K.K. Pieri. Clara J. Picus ni Doyle. Jean G. Polino ni Godjena. Mary J. Preston ni Brunner McCrossan. Sharon M. Rich ni Schilling. Helen W. Ronan ni Bressler. Gerald A. Ruland. Mary A. Rumschick ni Saplet. Christina Ryan ni Budzinski. Barbara Ann Sandecki. June W. Schnoffer ni Weaver. Carol L. Schultz ni Kelly. Peter W. Stevens. Virginia Stewart ni Joyner. Edward J. Thrun. Anthony Tony Topolowski Jr. Mary Bell Walsh ni Lindsay. Roy B. Walter. Doreen Whalen ni Sporitz. Doris Ann Wilk ni Boyer. Edward J. Whittle. Natalie R. Yasko. William Zielinski. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Again, that number being 716-821-5555. And now on to the horoscopes. It's Royal Stars from Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Sunday, December 7th, 2025. You're tolerant and individualistic. You seek knowledge and experience beyond society's conventional norms. This is a year of new beginnings, adventures, and major changes. Prepare for a leadership role. The stars will show what kind of day you're having, 5 being dynamic, 4 being positive, 3 being average, 2 being so-so, and 1 being difficult. For Aries, you're having a 4-star day. Unexpected events related to home and family might catch you off guard. However, they could attract financial and practical support. Tonight, socialize. Taurus, you're having a 5-star day. You're energetic, enthusiastic, and willing to be flexible today, which is a good thing because change is in the wind. Tonight, cocoon. Gemini, a 4-star day ahead. Keep an eye on your money and your possessions to avoid any regrets. Money-making ideas, perhaps from out of the blue, will lead to a better job or help you impress a boss. Tonight, discussions. Cancer, a 5-star day. This is an exciting day. You might see ways to change your circumstances. You might see new approaches to travel. Tonight, check your belongings. For Leo, a 4-star day. Family discussions might give you practical ideas. You might even experience a little epiphany that reveals a new way to do something, especially something you've been putting off or dreading. Tonight, you win. For Virgo, a 5-star day. Today you might meet a new and exciting friend, or an old friend might come back into your life unexpectedly. Surprise discussions especially might yield practical advice. Tonight, seek privacy. For Libra, a 5-star day. This is a money day for you. Respect your money-making ideas. Bosses and authority figures might surprise you and be impressed with your organizational skills and sharp ideas. Tonight, friendships. Scorpio, a 5-star day. Because you can think outside the box today, you have original ideas. Travel plans and issues related to the law, medicine, and publishing will appeal to you tonight. Tonight, you're noticed. For Sagittarius, a 4-star day. Research of the study of history will go well today because your mind is focused and paying attention to details. Tonight, explore. For Capricorn, a 4-star day. A discussion with someone older or more experienced might benefit you today. Others might appreciate your organizational skills. Tonight, check your finances. For Aquarius, a 4-star day. Today you impress people with your logic and thorough knowledge of something. Co-workers and issues that are work-related will flourish under your direction today. Tonight, cooperate. For Pisces, a 5-star day. Because your mind is sharp and focused, today is an excellent day to study something or complete a writing project. You will easily teach others. Tonight, work. And on this day in history, for December 7th, in 1787, Delaware became the first state to ratify the U.S. Constitution. In 1941, the Empire of Japan launched an air raid on the U.S. Navy base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, killing more than 2,300 Americans. The U.S. declared war against Japan the following day. In 1972, America's last crewed moon mission to date was launched as Apollo 17 blasted off from Cape Canaveral. In 1982, convicted murderer Charlie Brooks Jr. became the first U.S. prisoner to be executed by lethal injection at a prison in Huntsville, Texas. In 1988, a major earthquake in the Soviet Union devastated northern Armenia, killing at least 25,000 people. In 1993, 6 people were killed and 19 wounded in a mass shooting aboard a Long Island Railroad train in New York. In 2004, Hamid Karzai was sworn in as Afghanistan's first popularly elected president. And in 2018, James Alex Fields Jr., who drove his car into a crowd of counter-demonstrators at a 2017 white nationalist rally in Virginia, was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Heather Heyer, an anti-racism activist. He was later sentenced on that and other convictions to life in prison, plus 419 years. From the Political Notebook, we see in the District of Columbia, Border Patrol to start charging $5,000 arrest fee. The Trump administration will start charging a $5,000 fee to people apprehended who entered the U.S. illegally. The apprehension fee will apply to anyone 14 or older who is arrested and determined to have crossed the border without authorization and is deemed inadmissible, U.S. Border Patrol Chief Michael Banks said on Thursday on social media. The fee was approved by Congress under President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which included billions of dollars for immigration enforcement. Arrests at the southwest border have plummeted in the past year, reaching monthly lows not seen since the 1960s. In November, the Border Patrol reported making 7,300 arrests along the Mexican border, according to the Department of Homeland Security, a slight decline from October. A judge says deportation to base was an overstep. A federal judge ruled Friday that the Trump administration exceeded its authority in holding migrants designated for deportation at the U.S. Navy base at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. But Judge Sparkle L. Sukanen of the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., stopped short of ordering Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, to shut down the detention operation there. Instead, the judge rejected a government request to dismiss a class action challenge brought by the ACLU. A lawyer for the group said the legal group would soon seek a closure order. The White House began using Guantanamo as a way station for deportees in February after an order from President Trump to prepare the base to hold up to 30,000 immigrants. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents have held about 710 detainees there, all men with support from hundreds of U.S. soldiers and Marines. No migrants have been there since mid-October when the department sent 18 men with the final deportation orders from the base to El Salvador and Guatemala, then ceased operations before Hurricane Melissa. The Department of Homeland Security did not respond to a request for comment on whether the administration would still be sending immigration detainees who are designated for deportation to the base. The Justice Department also did not respond to a request for comment. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Sunday, December 7th on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this hour has been Edwin J. Vieira, and for the next hour, your reader will be Ron Bickelman.
Are you facing challenges with vision loss and need help with your smartphone, sending emails, navigating the internet, and staying connected with your family? VIA, Visually Impaired Advancement, is offering free classes for seniors weekly at multiple locations with free assistance for your smartphone, email, and internet skills. There's a new session every week, and it rotates between the South Towns and the North Towns. It's at your local Erie County libraries and at 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. For more information, call Elhana Porter at 716-888-4632. Again, that's 716-888-4632.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your reader is Ron Bickelman. Hochul vetoes bill that could aid kin of 514 victims. Buffalo attorney representing victims of the May 14, 2022 Tops Supermarket massacre on Jefferson Avenue slammed Governor Kathy Hochul on Saturday following the governor's fourth consecutive veto of the proposed Grieving Families Act. Hochul's rejection of the legislation, which would allow New York wrongful death suit litigants to seek damages for their emotional loss, was one of 84 decisions on bills Hochul's office announced at 7 p.m. Friday. Among other actions, Hochul signed Bo's Law, a proposal inspired by the death of an 18-year-old Lockport College student, and she signed a bill to aid the Rescue Volunteer and Exempt Firemen's Benevolent Association in Cheektowaga. On Saturday, Buffalo attorney John Elmore, who represents families of 3 deceased victims, said, and one survivor of the late hate-inspired supermarket carnage, said Hochul's latest veto of the Grieving Families Act was a huge slap in the face of the black communities that have supported Hochul. Elmore suggested that Hochul, a Buffalo-born Democrat up for re-election in 2026, will visit black churches and communities in Buffalo seeking votes on the campaign trail next year. I want her to look the community in the face and explain why she chose the corporate interest over people whose votes she's seeking, Elmore told the Buffalo News. Peyton Gendron, a white supremacist from Broome County, drove to the Tops on a Saturday afternoon wearing body armor. Gendron murdered 10 people, all black, and wounded 3 others in a shooting he live-streamed on the internet. Gendron, serving life in prison without parole on state murder charges, still faces a 27-count federal hate crimes-related case. Federal prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. Elmer said he would like Gendron's victims to be able to sue the killer for wrongful death based on their emotional devastation, but said New York continues to rely on wrongful death law dating to 1847. New York and Alabama are the only states without such a law, he said. Why is life in New York State worth less than it is in the other 48 states in the United States, Elmer asked. In rejecting the bill, Hochul said she very much believes that grieving families should be able to turn to the courts for justice, accountability, and meaningful compensation for the loss of their loved ones. The justice system often perpetrates inequities by valuing human life based on earning potential, the veto message stated. The bill is sponsored by Assemblymember Jennifer Lunsford, a Monroe County Democrat, and Senator Brad Hoylman, Signal, Democrat, Manhattan. Hochul questioned why lawmakers have not considered her proposed changes to the bill. Hochul said the state is facing an affordability crisis. The bill, if enacted, could lead to increased insurance premiums and increased stress on the healthcare systems, including ones in disadvantaged communities, Hochul said in the veto. Depth of grief and sorrow from losing a loved one because of the careless actions of another is indescribable, Hochul said. For the 4th year in a row, the legislature has passed a bill that continues to pose significant risk to consumers without any of the changes I expressed openness in the previous communications. A Hochul spokesperson said that following the shooting, Hochul secured more than $70 million to address immediate needs of the East Buffalo neighborhood targeted by Gendron. The governor is deeply committed to uplifting the community and supporting those impacted by the horrific tragedy, the spokesperson said. The bill passed the Assembly 131-13 and passed the Senate 51-10. Most lawmakers in Western New York's 19-member delegation voted for the bill with 4 exemptions. Assembly members David DePiro, Republican, East Aurora, Andrew Molitor, Republican, Westfield, and Senators George Borrello, Republican, Sunset Bay, and Thomas O'Mara, Republican, Big Flats, who represent part of Allegheny County, all voted against it. On the social media platform Friday night, Senate Minority Leader Robert Ork, Republican, North Tonawanda, said families in my district and across New York have fought hard for this legislation. Governor Hochul may have vetoed it, but these families aren't giving up, and neither am I. Bo's Law, sponsored by Assemblymember Karen McMahon, Democrat, Williamsville, and Senator Andrew Guanardes, Democrat, Brooklyn will require all higher learning institutions to inform students, parents, and guardians of their policies on a drug or alcohol violation, hospitalization, or overdose of all students under 21. It will also require provisions for colleges to offer regular training on the 1974 Federal Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, which governs decisions about student privacy. The law was inspired by the death of an 18-year-old bone miller, a native of Lockport, who died of an accidental fentanyl overdose May 6, 2022. His mother, Ginny, has been unaware that her son had previously overdosed at his previous college and needed to be resuscitated. His death inspired the mother and Bo's cousin, Alexa Friedman, seeking answers that led to the passing of the law, which Hochul signed Friday. The bill unanimously passed both houses in June. At the time, Ginny Miller told the Buffalo News, "My only prayer is that it takes a lot of decisions out of the administrative hands and helps them to make the right decisions and call the parents and make sure these children, because they are children, get help." Buffalo among the top cities for ease of car-free traveling. Buffalo ranks one of the top 10 best walk-and-ride cities in the United States, meaning it's relatively easy to shop and go out in Buffalo without owning or using a car. That's according to a recent analysis and review of 180 major cities nationwide for walk, bike, and transit access, commute times, and proximity to daily essentials. Buffalo's connected layout, compact neighborhoods, and improving transit options made it possible to live well without relying on a car, said the study by Storage Cafe said. Buffalo ranks 7th, flanked by Alexandria, Virginia at 6th, and New York City at 8. Rochester was 9th. The report highlighted everyday convenience of Buffalo's mix of walkable neighborhoods such as Elmwood Village, Allentown, and their dense network of shops and restaurants that make it easy for residents to meet daily needs close to home. But the everyday convenience is not the same for every city neighborhood, particularly those on the east side and Yolanda Hill. I'm in the Cold Spring, Jefferson area, and to me it's not walkable from the perspective of just like the maintenance of our sidewalks, said Hill, a founder of Colored People Girls Bike 2, a nonprofit group that promotes mobility, especially through cycling in low-income neighborhoods. Mobility is freedom, but freedom is when you're taking you somewhere, whether it's the housing or the grocery store or a job. So even if Buffalo becomes a car-free friendly city, the question will become for whom, she said. The report, a lot of Buffalo for Smart Streets program, it says, is setting the stage for safer, more connected bike and pedestrian infrastructure. The city's Smart Street Design Plan received the prestigious Architecture and Planning Award last year from Congress and New Urbanism. The plan, developed by the city's Office of Strategic Planning, seeks to enhance downtown streets by better accommodating the arrays of transportation options, including e-bikes, e-scooters, smart cars, and electric changing stations, and redesigning existing spaces for events, outdoor dining, and other uses. The Storage Cafe study also said the city's transit system is on the rise as the bus and light rail system logged more than 16 million rides last year with expansion plans underway to strengthen mobility across the region. Coats for Kids covers those in need of a little warmth. For 30 years, the charity has been collecting, cleaning, and donating outerwear. This story is about an annual charity drive, which is thriving and growing, but it begins on my living room couch Thursday night when I was lazily watching a football game. My phone rang at 10:30, which for me is in the who die window for receiving calls. So with some alarm, I answered, only to be greeted by the voice of Mark Summer, a longtime Buffalo News reporter who I had just seen that evening at Newspaper Guild's holiday party. "Hi, Dan," he said. "Is it all possible that you accidentally took my coat?" "What? I hope not," I said. But I had that sinking feeling. Sure enough, I walked into the coat room of the banquet facility, grabbed the very similar coat next to mine off the hanger, and threw it on unthinkably. A co-worker pieced together the mystery of Mark's missing coat and took mine home for safekeeping. On a frigid Friday morning, I reunited Mark with his coat shortly after my coat was returned to me. And that is the story. It's mildly embarrassing because I inconvenienced two other people and myself, but the episode was otherwise empty of drama. I was fine, Mark was fine, we both have more than one coat. Many people wish they could be so lucky. Coincidentally, my next stop after dropping by Mark's place was Colvin Cleaners on Elmwood Avenue in Kenmore to hear more about the Coats for Kids program. It has evolved into a year-round charity that provides winter coats, hats, scarves, and gloves to anyone, children or adults, who need them. The program is now in its 30th year. In a sign of the program's growth, the West Tier Auto Group has signed on to become a collection point for Coats for Kids for more than 60 West Tier locations in Western New York, Rochester, and Syracuse. On Monday, West Tier will host a live event to collect winter coats, gloves, and the like from 4 to 6:30 p.m. at the Subaru of South Lockport store, 6856 South Lockport Road, South Transit Road in Lockport. So far this season, Cleaners President Paul Bulani said they already have given away about 8,000 coats to children and adults in Western New York. He said they are on track to exceed last year's total of about 20,000 coats. The operation has grown so large that instead of people coming to the warehouse 1 or 2 days a year as they did early on, they've evolved into more of a distribution model. If they were selling the coats, they would be acting more like wholesalers. But of course, they're giving them away. Nonprofits, schools, whoever can fill out the form online, tell us how many coats they need and what sizes, and we'll send them, Bulani said. The end users will get the coats through the dozens of nonprofit organizations they support, including Friends of the Night People, Buffalo Public Schools, St. Luke's Mission of Mercy, and local organizations who specialize in helping immigrants and refugees. On the morning I visited, a large room used as a staging area looked empty except for a few racks of coats, but hours before I arrived, it was filled to the brim. Those coats were loaded onto trucks bound for nonprofit organizations around town. Throughout the day, the room would fill again, and more trucks would go out the next day and the next. I asked Bulani, son Christopher, Colvin Cleaners vice president, why they do all this work. They certainly don't have to. The elder Bulani took a moment to answer and smiled. I never knew I grew up poor, he said. He said his parents, Anthony and Josephine, ran the dry cleaning business and raised a family successfully, and they are by no means wealthy. As Paul Bulani got older, he said he realized what a feat his parents had accomplished by raising their family happily on small income. We got by, said Bulani, whose family business has been a family business since 1976. But we were always helping people. It wasn't even a question. It's just something we did. Chris Bulani and his grandparents were his best friends growing up, and they instilled in him the same feeling of responsibility and help of others. It's not just about the money, Chris Bulani said. It's about your time and your skills. Whatever you're good at, you use that to help people. We're good at cleaning clothes, so how can we use that to help other people? The Bulani family is not going to end poverty in Western New York. Next year, more people will need more coats. It might be you. They might be people you know, even people who seem fine today. But the time may come when they need something clean and warm, and they'll need someone to help them. My visit, especially on the heels of my coat mix-up mishap, made me think about all the coats, jackets, and sweaters and gloves that I own. You just collect things over the years, receive gifts, pick up something on sale, and maybe you don't really need, or before you know it, you have a full closet of perfectly warm clothing you never wear. What are the Bulanis good at? Not just cleaning clothes or marshaling dozens of people in service of distributing them. The Bulani family also has a genius for taking something ordinary and turning it into something quietly changes someone's day. Someone whose coat wasn't warm enough and had been worn so much it was falling apart. Now has the safety of wearing something warm and the dignity of wearing something that looks clean and new. After I left the warehouse, I kept thinking about how easy it was for me to grab my spare winter coat, and with some chagrin, I thought of several other warm coats I own that I'd forgotten about. I think it's clear that I need what I need to do about that. A lot of people don't have the kind of margin for error but because of Bellani's and the households, thousands of people in Western New York who donate to their drive do what they do, it means this morning someone woke up cold, might end the day a little bit warmer. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News on the Niagara Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Blaisdell police deny accusation of cover-up in $389,000 marijuana theft. More than 21 months have passed since someone with inside information got past an extensive security system and stole $389,000 worth of cannabis products from a Village of Blaisdell marijuana shop. No arrests have been made, and the owner of the state licensed shop, John Duncan, has posted a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the culprits. Furthermore, Duncan claims that Blaisdell police are covering up for a suspect who has connections to their department. The officer in charge of the department vehemently denied those allegations on Friday and said police are continuing efforts to crack the case. The Blaisdell police know who did this and refused to arrest him, said Duncan, who told the Buffalo News on Friday that he had asked the state attorney's general office to investigate Blaisdell police. It's a cover-up. He was the victim of a theft that we're still investigating it. We have spent a large amount of time on this case, responded Dennis Feldman, officer in charge of the department. Cover up? Absolutely not. Mr. Duncan is making unfair accusations against our department and the man he claims is the burglar. Feldman said he agrees with Duncan on one point, that whoever burglarized Duncan's business on February 23rd, 2024, has extensive inside information about the operation. The intruder or intruders were able to get through several locked doors, disable more than a dozen surveillance cameras, and use numerical code to enter a walk-in vault at the 716 cannabis shop on Electric Avenue, according to both police and Duncan. This was no forced entry. Whoever did this had information about the layout of the shop, location of products, and how to disassemble security systems in the shop, Feldman said. It had to be someone with extensive knowledge of their business and the buildings we were in, said Duncan, who has since moved 716 Cannabis to a new location on Camp Road in Hamburg. According to Duncan, thieves stole 6,106 items, more than 3/4 of the store's inventory at the time, including gummies, flower vapes, and other items worth a total of $389,000. To my knowledge, this is the largest theft from a cannabis shop in New York State since it began licensing, said Duncan, who owns the shop with his wife, Ashley Brown, and has 14 employees. The unsolved crime is the first large-scale theft from any licensed marijuana business in Western New York since the state's first cannabis dispensaries opened in 2003. It's an active investigation and one that we take very seriously, especially in the light of the claims Mr. Duncan has been making about our department, Feldman said. Blaisdell Police Force made up of 32 members, all part-timers. All members either work for other police departments or are retired from other departments, Feldman said. Feldman is a former officer from Evans Police, has been working with the Blaisdell office for 7 years. He became an officer in charge in May. Feldman said Blaisdell investigators have run down a number of leads since the theft occurred and are still hoping to solve the crime. In interviews on Friday of last year, Duncan blamed the crime on businessman Michael Ritchie, the former landlord on Electric Avenue, who also runs a towing business and has a contract to tow the impound cars for Blaisdell Police. Duncan said he was embroiled in a heated landlord-tenant dispute with Ritchie when the crime took place. Ritchie told the news during an interview last year that he had nothing to do with the crime. He added that Blaisdell investigators told him he was not a suspect, and after he took a polygraph test, Ritchie also said he voluntarily allowed police to search properties he owns for stolen marijuana. Mike Ritchie did take a polygraph test, and I do not consider him a suspect, Feldman said on Friday. Duncan said he is offering $20,000 in reward for information leading to the conviction and whoever burglarized his shop. He asked that anyone with information about the theft should contact him at info@716cannabisllc.com. I'm at my wit's end at this point because I really don't think the Blaisdell police are serious about catching the person who did this, Duncan said. He said he contacted the State Attorney's General Office last month asking them to investigate Blaisdell police and their handling of the case. The AG office confirmed that it received the complaint and is reviewing it. The State Office of Cannabis Management had no immediate comment Friday about the news and sought to verify Duncan's claim that the burglary at his office was the largest theft of its kind from any state licensed marijuana business. Feldman said anyone with information about the crime call his office at 716-822-1921, extension 12. Tribes in Louisiana are working to save their shrinking lands. Cherie Mathern looked down to the Bayou Point Ao Chien, wide enough for several boats to pass through. In the distance, a stand of dead trees marked where salt water comes and goes during storm-driven flooding. The bayou was once shallower and just wide enough for a small boat to pass. Land and cattle once roamed is submerged now, and elders tell stories of tree canopies once so lush they nearly shut out the day. Delicate lattice of Louisiana's coastline has been steadily retreating for generations, as it does the Po Ao Chien Indian tribe, and other indigenous people are fighting to protect what's left to adapt. That includes painstaking efforts to build makeshift reefs that slow erosion and sturdier homes in buildings to better withstand storms. We want to be able to make it so that people can stay here for as long as possible, as long as they want to stay, said Mathern, who was, as the tribe's director of daily operations, helps coordinate its response to the erosion threat. They hope to avoid the fate of John Charles Chateau Nation, a nearby tribe that was forced to move 3 years ago about 40 miles north from the encroaching Gulf of Mexico. Isle de Jean Charles, their island home southwest of New Orleans, has lost 98% of its land. Cause of erosion. Louisiana's coast has been steadily retreating for several reasons. Levees along the Mississippi River have severed the natural growth of land, creating sand, silt, and clay, starving the wetlands of sedentary they need to survive. Canals have allowed salt water to flow into the wetlands, killing freshwater vegetation that holds them together and accelerating erosion. Groundwater pumping is causing land to sink, and planet-warming emissions from burning coal, oil, and gas are fueling hurricanes and accelerating sea level rise. Since the 1930s, Louisiana has lost 2,000 square miles of land. The U.S. Geological Survey analysis found that when the erosion was at its worst, a football field's worth of coastal wetlands was disappearing every 34 minutes. It's a difficult problem to solve without being able to count on the Mississippi River to periodically drop sediment to maintain the land, said Sam Bentley, geography professor at the Louisiana State University. They're going to displace ecosystems. It's going to displace communities. It's going to isolate infrastructure that's along the coastline, Bentley said. And there are going to be a lot of changes that are very hard to deal with. Indigenous burial and cultural sites are risk eroding, and traditional ways of life, shrimping, fishing, and sustenance farming are under pressure. Without action, researchers estimate the state could lose up to 3,000 square miles, an area larger than Delaware, over the next 50 years. Reefs built Showing the effects. Reefs built from oyster shells are one attempt to stem the erosion. Oysters are collected from restaurants, stuffed in a bag, and stacked just offshore from the reefs. The program, launched in 2014 by a coalition to restore coastal Louisiana, has recycled more than 16 million pounds of shells in that time. That's enough to protect 1.5 miles of shoreline. Since the Po Ao Chien tribe had a 400-foot reef built in 2019 to protect a historic mound, the coalition has measured a 50% reduction in the rate of land loss where the reefs were built, the coalition spokesman said, James Karst. But there are limits to what the reclaimed oyster shells can do. There aren't enough shells for Louisiana's estimate 7,721-mile coastline, said Karst. And moving them is expensive, so they have to be strategic. Many reefs they've built protect the sites of cultural importance. They're also limited to the areas where the water is salty enough to make for the oyster shells to last. Their work might seem like a tiny drop in the bucket, but they are losing land at the rate you are. Carr said you need all the drops in the buckets you can get. Some of the Coalition's most recent work came about 30 miles to the southwest of the Pao Ao Shen land in a project with Grand Shilu, Dulac Band of Biloxi Shitamacha Caucho tribe that wrapped up in November. It was built on Louisiana University's main consortium, a location easy for public to see and learn about oyster reefs, said Chief Devon Parfait. Now let's look at Asking Eric. Years after active addiction, family remains distant. Dear Eric, I've just turned 40 this past year. Last 15 years I was in horrible drug addiction. I lied and hurt, and I did terrible things to a lot of people, especially my family. About 8 years ago, they offered to disown me. Understandable. I've cleaned up and got my act together the last 6 years. At first, I tried to force my way back into their lives, which all refuted. I lashed out, said horrible things, and stopped trying to be in their lives. My mom will stop by on my birthday for 10 minutes or so and drop off a card at Christmas. As for my 2 older brothers and my father, it's radio silence. I guess what I'm asking is, what do I do to fix this and fast? As I've just turned 40 this year, my parents are both in their 70s, time's running out, and I couldn't imagine living my life without some kind of acceptance from my father, or knowing he did or he does love me. My heart breaks at the thought, but this is a real pickle. How can I fix a problem when the ones I need to fix it won't talk to me? Do I just keep ignoring their existence and put on the facade I don't care as my wife and my 4-year-old son? What picture am I painting to my son as I've been guilty by association? You could say he has never spent time with his grandparents or uncles or even my nieces and nephews. Discombobulated. You're discombobulated. There's a saying in some recovery communities, perhaps you've heard it, time takes time. This means you accumulate sober days one at a time. There's no fast track to long-term recovery, unfortunately. Similarly, there's no fast track to healing years of hurt and distress. This can be hard to accept. It may feel like you're trapped in your old self, in your old actions, but you have to accumulate days in your new way of life, one at a time too. If you're in a recovery program like Narcotics Anonymous or SMART Recovery, keep working it. Talk to your sponsor or your peer support group about your desire to make amends with your relatives and mend those relationships. Ask yourself if you fully acknowledge and apologize for things that you during your active addiction. It's not a letter doing. If not, a letter doing so is a good place to start. I know this causes a lot of pain and possibly shame, but you're not your past, and you're not the worst of things you've done. Let your wife know that what you're really feeling. Continuing to put up the facade will only hurt your relationships and could endanger your sobriety. Tell the truth. That's how things change, little by little. Dear Eric, my husband and I have been married for 15 years. He has children from his first wife, and I have boys from my first marriage. Recently, we're at a birthday party, and my stepson's home for one of our grandchildren. The kids, ages 5 and 9, were all punching Uncle Rick in the stomach as hard as they could. And a gentleman sitting next to me said, "I do not like the hitting." I said, "I agree. I think it's disrespectful." My daughter-in-law just about jumped over the table and said, "It's not disrespectful, they're playing." They no longer speak to me, and I have been banished from their house. My stepson and I disrespected my daughter-in-law. I stand by my statement. I do not think kids should be allowed to punch a grown-up man in the stomach for fun. Your thoughts? Banned from mother-in-law. First, the word disrespectful was tossed around a lot. If it's possible that your daughter-in-law felt you were criticizing her parenting in an unwanted way, this isn't to say that your kids should have been punching their uncle. I wouldn't have been my choice, but Uncle Rick also has bodily anatomy and may have chosen not to stop them because he didn't mind. It's impossible for me to say, but if that was the case, one can see how other people's opinions about punching might not have been welcome. Your stance on this matter isn't outrageous, though. One hopes that your stepson and daughter-in-law are teaching their children how to play safely and respectfully and without violence. But even if they've missed the mark on this one, it may be family unity for you to agree or disagree and tell your daughter-in-law that you didn't mean to malign her parenting and you'd like to start over. Now let's take a look at sports. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News on Niagara Falls Radio Reading Service. Time is 30 minutes after the hour. Rough promises shake-up after Sabres' latest flop. It doesn't seem like Terry Pegula is going to make any big moves. Kevyn Adams seems frozen in fear, too. So this one is on Lindy Ruff. While he still has a chance, the NHL's only coach on an expiring contract better try something to spark energy into his team, because this group has developed a completely split personality that is about to render yet another hockey season in Buffalo moot before Christmas. Ruff promised changes here Friday after the Sabres went quietly into the cold Manitoba night with a 4-1 loss in Winnipeg in Canada Life Center on Friday night. His top players are deserting him away from Quebec Center, and veteran goalies Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Alex Lyon have exactly 0 wins on the road this season as well. If your men don't perform, you have no chance. You also have a 2-8-2 road record, the NHL's worst. They have to produce, Ruff said. It might be just time to shake it up a bit. A big shake-up of lines to try and get something going. Given those words, practice in Calgary on Sunday figures to be a tad interesting. The Sabres can't keep going on this path, having just scored 3 goals while losing their first 2 games of the road trip and staring at 4 more games out west. There are 2-10-3 in the last 15 road contests dating back to their most recent regulation win, a 5-2 victory in Ottawa way back in April 1st. Their 2 wins this year have been in overtime at Detroit and a shootout at Minnesota, and rookie Colton Ellis was in net for both of them. In the total picture, the numbers were kind of astonishing. The Sabres have outscored their foes at home 53-45 while going 9-5-2 and are tied for third in the league in home scoring. But on the road, they are the NHL's worst, -22, and have been bludgeoned 51-29. They're last in the league at 2.41 goals per game, nearly a full goal less per night than at home. Every other team in the league has at least 4 wins in 22 of 32 games and have at least 22 of 32 teams have at least 6. The home road splits, several individuals are stunning as well. You have to start with Luukkonen, who is 4-1 at KeyBank with a 1.97 goals against average and a 9.21 save percentage, is 0-3-1, 3.36.860 on the road. Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch are combined +8 at home, but are -16 on the road, while Thompson is ringing in at a -12. Thompson doesn't have a goal in 6 games, and number 1 center Josh Norris endured a -3 night that saw him blow coverage and 2 Winnipeg goals. Meanwhile, Tuch's grievous turnover up the middle in the Jets' blue line sent away Tanner Pearson on a breakaway that gave the hosts a 2-1 lead early in the second period, from which the Sabres never recovered. It's a whole different game if you turn the puck over at the blue line, Tuch said. I have to put the game on myself. I need to be better. Just can't do things like that. Can't have stuff like that kick into my game. I know better. It was a basic play that Tuch needs to keep the puck along the wall rather than try to force it past to Josh Jones in the middle of the ice that essentially created a 2-on-0 break. I just brought it to the middle and I thought I had more time and space than I did, Tuch said. Old friend Eric Comrie put in a relatively easy 31st shot night in the Winnipeg net. At least on the road, the Sabres are super easy to play against. They don't create much traffic and aren't willing to pay the price. In the last 3 road games, Buffalo has totaled just 3 goals and 5-on-5. You've got to work harder. You've got to work around that, said a clearly disgusted winger Jason Zucker, who scored Buffalo's only goal on the power play. You've got to get pucks there. You've got to be willing to do the dirty, go to dirty areas and be willing to just fight for one, to go off your butt, go off something, get it in the net. And I don't think we have enough of that. We've got even strength goals in the last. We've got 1 even strength goal in the last 6 periods of play, Ruff said. You're not going to win any road games if you don't score a 5-on-5. The Sabres simply aren't hard to play against on the road and can't keep their speed game going for more than a period at a time. It's a mindset thing, Zucker said. I think I've got to be better being a leader, being an older guy. I kind of warning us what this road trip is and the road game is going to be, so I'm going to put that one on me. It needs to be better. I need to be better at preparing our guys for that. Notable veteran player like Zucker to fall on a saber. Ultimately, however, this is on rough to try to fix. His team has had a 13-game winless streak since last December and quickly started chasing this season by falling into a 1-4-4 rut. And this trip sure feels like it's going to be a lot worse. Continuing now in sports, Durant joins elite 31,000 points club, NBA. When Kevin Durant began his NBA career, he looked at some of the league's greats as a standard that he hoped to one day reach. On Friday night against the Phoenix Suns, he continued to etch some of the league's greats as a standard that he hoped to one day reach. On Friday night against the Phoenix Suns, he continued to etch his name amongst the greats when he joined the NBA's elite group by becoming the 8th player in league history to reach 31,000 career points. As you're coming up in the league, you look at those guys up as heroes, put them on pedestals, and you look at their accomplishments as sometimes unreachable, he said. But then you get on the road to do your thing, and since 2009, 2008, I've been focused on being the best player I can be. 15-time All-Star entered the game needing just 4 points to reach the mark. He made 2 free throws for the first points of the night before accomplishing it on a jumper midway through the first quarter. They played a highlight reel of Durant on the video board in the arena and posted a graphic congratulating him on reaching 31,000 points during the time out of the second quarter. When the camera flashed to him on the bench, the crowd applauded. He was too busy talking to a teammate about the game to notice. 37-year-old Durant did it in his 1,141st game of his career, tying the NBA's all-time leading scorer, LeBron James, for doing it third fewest games behind Michael Jordan, 1,011, and Wilt Chamberlain, 1,015. The other players who have scored at least 31,000 points are Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Karl Malone, Kobe Bryant, and Dirk Nowitzki. I didn't look at them as something that was out of my realm, Durant said. I just felt like I was locked in and did what I did. I could be mentioned in the same breath of those guys. Durant, the second overall pick in the 2007 draft, is the first season with the Rockets after this summer's blockbuster trade from Phoenix. Houston coach Ime Udoka, who played against Durant in his rookie season, reflected on his career and how he hasn't slowed down. He's learned to adapt, adjust. He's seeing everything, and being able to do this with longevity at this high level is incredible, Udoka said. And Udoka expects this to be one of the many more milestones that Durant will accomplish before his storied career ends. I've got more to do, but I'm grateful to still be able to be playing, and hopefully I'll keep doing this and keep moving up the charts, Durant said. Ante Konopo to miss a month. Milwaukee Bucks coach Doc Rivers says he anticipates Giannis Antetokounmpo to miss at least a month as the two-time MVP recovers from a strained right calf. The initial reports indicated Antetokounmpo would be out 2 to 4 weeks. Rivers suggested Friday it would be likely be on the higher end of the timeline. Let's hope he's back sooner, but I'm going to guess it's going to be a 4-week range, Rivers said. Rivers emphasized the importance of caution with calf issues to avoid the risk of a player getting hurt more seriously. And so it may take longer than we want, Rivers said. That even may make Gianni frustrated over it. But we've got to try to get that right. The Bucks had another setback Friday night when guard A.J. Green, who was shooting nearly 50% for three-point range, bruised his left shoulder on the second quarter. Rivers said Green would be undergoing an MRI on Saturday in Detroit. Antetokounmpo injured his calf in the opening minutes of a 113-109 home victory over Detroit on Wednesday. In soccer, Adams sets bold goal for United States. Tyler Adams has set a bold goal for the U.S. soccer team, aiming to reach the World Cup semifinals for the first time since an inaugural tournament in 1930. Everyone's going to want to say winning is obviously the goal, the American midfielder said Friday after the World Cup draw. But I think setting the benchmark of the furthest the U.S. team has gone is also realistic. The 14th ranked U.S. will start Group D against number 39 Paraguay on June 12th in Inglewood, California, and play 26th ranked Australia 6 days later at Seattle. The Americans conclude the group stage on June 29th back at SoFi Stadium against the winner of playoffs among Turkey 25, Slovakia 45, and Romania 45, and Kosovo 80. Getting 3 points right off the bat like that would be an amazing start for us and just put us in great position for the group, said Christian Pulisic said. It appears to be among the less difficult of the 12 groups. The top two in each advance to the new round of 32 among the best four third-place teams. Listen, we all want to win the World Cup, defender Tim Ream said. You don't play a tournament just to be there. So we've had conversations, Chris and I have had conversations about, yeah, we want to win. I think people can laugh and say whatever they want. In recent friendlies, U.S. lost 2-1 to Turkey in June, beat Australia 2-1 in October, and defeated Paraguay 2-1 last month. Potentially, we played 3 of these teams in the last 6 months, but that can only a little bit of a false kind of sense of security, defender Ream said. In nearly a century of World Cup play, the U.S. is 1-7 in knockout games, getting outscored 227. Americans' only win was 2-0 over Mexico in 2002's round of 16, which was followed by the 1-0 quarterfinal loss to Germany. The Americans are winless in the last 12 World Cup matches against European teams, outscored 20-10. There's no easy game in the World Cup. In fact, I think some of our games are the hardest in the previous World Cup against the lesser opponents, Adams said. At the 2022 tournament in Qatar, the U.S. tied Wales 1-1 at England 0-0 before beating Iran 1-0 on Pulisic's goal to advance. It's fair to say that the last World Cup we couldn't set a bar or standard for anything. We didn't know what to expect, Adams said. Now, looking back at it, I think we have more experience. We're a lot more mature. We've grown up as individuals and as a team. Coach Mauricio Pochettino has scheduled friendlies against Belgium and Portugal in March, and versus a team to be determined in Germany just before the tournament. As he molds his roster, Pochettino thinks about Miracle, a 2004 movie he watched last month about the 1980 U.S. Olympic team of young players that upsets heavily favored Soviet Union and went on to win the gold medal. Herb Brooks' decisions made an impression on Pochettino. We don't need the best players. We need the right players to make the team strong, Pochettino said. Right players to build a powerful team with the possibility to fight with any team in the world. Good and right are completely different. Continuing along now, the Buffalo Bills mailbag. Slay's rejection of Buffalo continues a tough stretch for GM Bean. BAS, I'm guessing Brandon Bean wishes he hadn't tried to acquire Darius Slay, who did not appear thrilled to join the Bills. To make matters worse, an AFC team picked up Jamarcus Ingram, who was claimed by the Texans, leaving the Bills down a cornerback. Why do you think he said nay to the Bills? Does he want to play for a different team, or did Kevin Adams whisper to him about the high taxes and lack of palm trees in Western New York? Nicely done on Adams' crack. We're always here for some quality shade throwing at the Sabres general manager, who is inexplicably still on the job. As for Slay, he spoke about the situation on Emmanuel Acho's YouTube show, The Speakeasy, and attributed his hesitancy about reporting to Buffalo to an unwillingness to pick up and move after 13 years in the NFL. That's the top organization, Slay said of the Bills. They have a lot of great things going. They win, they go to the playoffs, they got a franchise quarterback, so it wasn't a bad fit. It just caught me at a bad time. Slay said he was packing up. He said packing up and moving isn't something he wants to do at this point. He pointed out that Buffalo is cold, they say, newsflash, which shouldn't be much of an issue for someone who has played in Philadelphia, Detroit, and Pittsburgh. Nevertheless, there's evidently a factor in Slay's thinking that causes you to roll your eyes. The thinking was that Slay wanted to go back to Philadelphia, where he won a championship with the Eagles, but told Acho he was unsure what he would have decided in that situation. Either way, it's a tough look for the Bills and general manager Brandon Beane. He lost a player in Ingram that the coaching staff spent years developing. Ingram wasn't a star, but he was a player who knew the scheme and could contribute on special teams. But losing him for nothing stinks, especially with his local tie to the University of Buffalo. What it's worth, Bills coach Sean McDermott seemed none too happy about losing Ingram during his press conference on Friday. Understandably so. It seems improbable that Beane would have made such a move if he had any idea Slay might not report. You're listening to a reading of articles and features for the Buffalo News. Time is 45 minutes after the hour on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. JM asks, this is somewhat nebulous, but if two players, one a wide receiver, the other man on defense, become available, who would be guaranteed to have more of an immediate impact? But who would push the salary cap? Which would you pick? Do the Bills pretty much have to run the table to have a chance to make the playoffs? Do 12-5 teams make the playoffs? Jay, that's pretty open-ended. Can I get Jamar Chase for the offense, Myles Garrett for the defense? At that point, it becomes a philosophical debate. If you believe the old saying that offense wins games but defense wins championships, then you're probably going to choose Garrett. My choice, however, would be Chase. In my opinion, the Bills' passing offense has been the problem area for most of the season. Adding a player who could transform it overnight is too good to pass up, and the record needed going into the playoffs, the Bills don't have to run the table. They could finish 11-6 and have a good chance of making it. They might even make it at 10-7, although it gets a little dicey with tiebreaker scenarios. John Jaryinsky asks, of the Bills' one-year contracts, which do you predict should the Bills resign for next year? Jay, Joey Bosa has been the most impactful of those additions. If he doesn't return, the Bills have major concerns at edge rusher. The concern there is injuries. The Bills have done their best to keep Bosa healthy, but injuries elsewhere at the positions have led him to playing more than the team probably had hoped he would at this point of the season. Bosa will miss Sunday's game against the Bengals with a hamstring injury. If the Bills can find a way to win, getting Bosa some rest, not only for his hamstring but also his wrist injury, which he's been playing through, would be a good thing. Steve asks, it appears to me that Dan Dawkins has gained quite a bit of weight when comparing the newer photos with the older ones. I understand that at a point, Adebulk is an asset for an offensive lineman, but when does Adebulk turn from an asset to a liability? Dawkins' scouting report on NFL.com listed him at 6'4", 314 pounds ahead of 2017 draft. He's listed at 6'5", 320, so he's gained an inch and put on 6 pounds. Dawkins has been listed at the same height and weight for years. It pretty much feels unlikely that he's stayed exactly the same all the time. That said, his mobility rarely appears to be compromised, even if he's tipping the scales more than 320 pounds today. He's also been remarkably durable. Before missing the game against Pittsburgh, Dawkins hadn't missed a game because of injury since 2022. In his career, he's missed just 3 games because of injury. If Dawkins has added bulk, it hasn't been a liability. Dave Boy asks, there's a dark question, but one should be addressed. Let's say the Bills lose 3 of their final 5 games, Bengals, Patriots, and Eagles, and fail to make the playoffs. Is there a scenario you could see where the main pieces of the coaching staff, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and special teams coordinator get let go and the team starts over at these coaching positions? Anything and everything should be on the table if the Bills miss the playoffs with Josh Allen in his prime. Since I don't think owner Terry Pegula has the stomach to make change at general manager or head coach, the coordinators will be a natural place to look. I've said this forever and will continue to say it. The strongest argument I can come up with is to keep McDermott and Beane, is I don't trust Terry Pegula to hire their replacements. Admittedly, it's not a great argument, but you ask yourself, would you trust Pegula to get it right? So if Beane and McDermott would stay, which I expect they will, changing coordinators would be a logical move. Out of the darkness, family lifted Shaq Thompson from his lowest steps and led him to become a leader with the Bills. Week 14. Every snap during practice and training camp confirmed to his teammates what they'd heard about seeing from Shaq Thompson. He's a dog, admired Bills edge rusher Greg Rousseau. Look at how he plays. Instead of trying to tackle ball carriers, Thompson runs through them. The 11th-year linebacker who spent his first 10 seasons in Carolina plays with the same brand of controlled violence that defined his position for generations. This isn't a head-hunting veteran. Thompson has been through enough to know the toll football can take on a man's body and mind. He drives his shoulder into the torso with ferocity that can be conjured only by the sport's fiercest competitors. 2 years ago, Thompson broke his right leg during the second game of his ninth season. The year before, he tore his Achilles tendon in his left leg. Thompson contemplated retirement. Bedridden and instructed not to move, Thompson endured some dark days. They weren't his first either. The quiet and whimsical husband of father of three conceals those depressive thoughts like the one that followed him for 2 years following the unexpected death of his mother, Patty. I get mad, Thompson said. I get depressed. But the only person you can see who can see this is my wife. She knows me. Nobody else will. That's just who I am. I really hold everything in. That's probably why I play so angry on the field. I can just let out all my frustration. His wife Gabby saw things in the aftermath of another significant injury. He was still a present, loving husband and father, but he was quieter than usual. The devastating setback occurred 4 games into his contract year. Though few NFL players are as gifted as Thompson, he played a season of rookie ball with the Red Sox organization. Teams prioritize linebackers who are younger and faster, who would take a chance on a 31-year-old. On the days when he doubted himself, Gabby provided tough love. She encouraged him to think about his head and his heart and not the raw emotions that only an injury like this can create. The latest chapter of his football journey, like each one that preceded it, is about family, the one in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the one he's built in Buffalo, and the one whose matriarch died too soon. He wants to prove it to himself, Gabby said. He wants to prove it to Carolina. He wants to prove it to Buffalo. He wants to prove it to everyone around the world that want doesn't kill me because it makes me stronger, whether it's through voice or running through a running back. He's proving he's still at the top of his game. Thompson was in London. Patty's son, Thompson was in London following the Panthers' win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, October 14th, 2019, when his phone rang. One of his 4 brothers called to tell Thompson that his mother died in her sleep. She was 57 years old. Patty was known as a giver. She cooked fried chicken for the boys' football teams if they'd won their game. She'd do anything for her boys. Through her, they learned the importance of family. She encouraged Shaq to lead, not foul. Lessons learned from Patty shaped Shaq into the leader he became in Carolina. Even though her own bouts with depression, she nurtured and guided them. This wasn't about a sporting event she missed. And if Patty was happy or sad, nobody knew. My mom, seeing her and how she handled things, she's probably the biggest reason why I handle things the way I do. Shaq began to text family and friend members more often. He didn't want to be shy about saying, I love you or I miss you. Deep down, though, Thompson hurt. Football, his outlet since he was a child, couldn't erase the overwhelming grief that shrouded him. I'd rather be there for somebody, he said, contemplating the profound impact Patty had on his worldview. Honestly, when my mom died, nobody knows, but I went through depression for like 2 years. I had thoughts about ending my life and stuff like that. I kind of just told my wife that probably last year, these 2 years, I just kept a bunch to myself. The 2 years after my mom died, those were probably the hardest 2 years of my life. Thompson sat across from his new teammates in second-year safety Trey Boston at a Morton Steakhouse in Charlotte on a night in late April of 2015. 1 week earlier, Thompson returned 21 years old. Panthers selected him with their 25th pick in the draft. Thompson, already respected for his ability to build relationships. Boston, already respected for his ability to build relationships and energize the locker room, got asked by the coaching staff to take Thompson to dinner to get to know him. It became clear to Boston several minutes into their conversation he wasn't talking to a typical rookie. Thompson was humble and mature, eager to earn respect and opportunity on a team that already had a elite bunch of linebackers, Tom Davis and Luke Kuechly. Panthers had to wait and see what Thompson could do on the field because he had to return to the University of Washington to finish his semester. Naturally, teammates were curious whether Thompson could help them. What was so special about this kid? The team used the first-round pick on a linebacker, even when there were already two exceptional ones in the building. It quickly became apparent that his two teammates, why Thompson was different than most 21-year-old athletes. The first practice, we didn't even have pads on yet. We knew he was a dog, Boston recalled. Movement was so efficient. He came into the game. This was a young man that you knew he was going to be playing 10 years from now. Thompson's arrival helped transform the Panthers' defense into one of the best in the NFL, and during his rookie season, they reached the Super Bowl with current Bills coach Sean McDermott calling plays. Thompson appeared in 117 regular season games across his first 6 years in Carolina. Behind the scenes, he learned from Kuechly and Davis. Gradually, Thompson found his voice and approach as a leader. Teammates knew about the impact on Thompson. Patty taught him the value of hard work and sacrifice. Patty wasn't absent, though. She supported them financially and emotionally. The boys saw her strength, whether it was through her work in California Franchise Tax Board or resolve she showed as a single parent. No one cheered louder for Thompson's boys during sporting events. He's Patty's son, said Boston, a close friend of Thompson, who played 7 NFL seasons before his retirement. He's a product of his environment. He's a fighter. He's somebody who's not going to quit. He's somebody who's always believes he has a chance. Family every weekend, evening at 6 o'clock. Thompson knows to call home. The video call is a chance to hear his children's day. He helps them with math homework. The family decided it made more sense for Gabby and the kids, 9, 7, and 5 years old, to stay in Charlotte while Shaq plays out the season in Buffalo. There's no reason to relocate. When they put down roots in a city they've called home for more than a decade. He's still dad at the end of the day, Gabby said. I have to give all the credit to my wife, Shaq said. She's been making it easy for me to focus on ball and make sure I'm healthy. She's wearing a lot of different hats now and doing everything for me, my 3 kids. Gabby keeps track of everyone's schedule, including Shaq with the Bills, so a dinner planner and to-do list. There are tutoring sessions, soccer games, flag football games, and speech events. Gabby also runs investment real estate business. Distance during football season is new for the Thompson family, but the demands of the NFL career are not. Even his previous games with Carolina, Thompson had responsibilities that prevented him from attending sporting or school events. Their daughter and their 2 sons, married athletes with children like Thompson, can't pursue their passion because they have a partner at home who's supportive and organized. Once the Panthers released Thompson in June, he knew he wanted to go to Buffalo. He had relationships with McDermott and general manager Bean and linebackers coach Al Holcomb from their previous time together in Carolina. It didn't dawn on me I wanted to retire, and I would be lying to you if I said it didn't go through my head. The injuries took a mental toll on Thompson. After a broken leg, he traveled to Panama to undergo stem cell therapy. He studied different methods to maximize performance and enhance recovery. Shaq had distractions during football season in 2023 and 24 because he was still texting his Panther teammates and ensuring they were preparing for each games. The uncertainty weighed on him. Thompson had 2 objectives when he signed a 1-year contract with the Bills in June: prove he can still play at a high level and earn the respect of his teammates. Let's take a look at the scoreboard. College football, Sun Belt Championship, number 19, James Madison, 31, Troy, 14. American Championship, number 21, Tulane, 34. Number 20, North Texas, 21. Conference USA Championship, Kennesaw State, 19. Jacksonville State, 15. Mountain West Championship, Boise State, 38. UNLV, 21. In the NHL, on Friday, Vegas 3, New Jersey 0, Winnipeg 4, Buffalo 1, Dallas 4, San Jose 1, Utah 4, Vancouver 1, Anaheim 4, Washington 3 in a shootout. Sunday's games, Colorado at Philadelphia, the Islanders are at Florida, San Jose at Carolina, Pittsburgh at Dallas, Columbus at Washington, St. Louis at Montreal, Vegas at the Rangers, and Chicago at Anaheim. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for December 7th. We read from the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast it at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your reader today has been Ron Bickelman.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of Buffalo Magazine. Following that at noon is the Sunday Gusto. And at 1 o'clock is the Sunday front section of the New York Times. Stay with us for these readings and more. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,